So here we are, and we're excited that you have been able to join us. We are thawed out, and we have generators helping us get the program going. Unfortunately, we do not have power on the prairie still. So thank you all for joining us and your patience as we trudge through this exciting opportunity to share our annual with you. Let's talk a little bit about our bison here at the Tallgrass Prairie Preserve. I'm going to share a map with everyone right quick. As you can see here, the Joseph H. Williams Tallgrass Prairie Preserve is located in northeastern Oklahoma. This is not the only bison herd within the Nature Conservancy. We actually have 12 total bison herds here in the U.S., totaling 6,500 of those bison are here. We're going to talk about bison because that's what you guys came here for, right? All right, so they are the star of today's show. And if you look closely behind me, you will see bison. Those bison are in the corrals. They're waiting their turn to go through and get their health checkup. We also have some additional live camera views that we set up so that everyone could see, and it's windy out here. I'm sorry, y'all, I'm keeping my hair in the process, but so that you all could see some various views of our bison out here on the preserve. All right, I'm going to show you one of those right quick. Let's take a closer look at the kiddos behind me. So as you can see, we can't necessarily zoom in with our live cam, but on this live cam here, if you look back in that corner, that is a mix of adults and calves. You'll see that there's also some hay that's kind of in there. The hay, they're hay bales that we do put out there. It helps them relieve their stress. Roundup can be stressful on the bison. They might forage on it. They might flick it around with their head, all totally normal behavior. We also have one of my favorites, the calf cam, which is where we have lots of baby bison. So we will be sharing that later, so stay tuned because it's going to be epic. We also have another special guest with us here today on the windy Tallgrass Prairie out here in Oklahoma. And that special guest is our presenter. It's the one and only Mr. Harvey Payne. If you know Harvey Payne, then you know what an incredible man he is. He is the original preserve director of this Tallgrass Prairie Preserve. He's been with the Nature Conservancy and been a part of this effort for over 34 years. He's also an incredible bison expert. We're really fortunate to have him with us today, and he will also be doing a live question and answer session at the end of his presentation. Because we do not have any power out here on the prairie, we are limited to an hour. No power, just an hour. We have about 10 devices out here set up to make today happen, and we've got to make sure that we ensure lots of battery juice and plenty of juice for them to be able to survive this 1 hour webinar on the prairie with no power. So thanks again for joining us, everyone. I am going to turn off this corral cam. We will come back later, and hopefully they will come out and get closer to the camera. Okay, so without further ado, we are going to turn this over to our presenter today, and let's get this show on the road. We're going to start out with Harvey talking to us about what exactly is a bison roundup. Harvey Payne, buddy, take it away.
Thank you, Katie, and welcome to everyone to the Tallgrass Prairie Preserve, named in honor of Joseph H. Williams. It's a very special place. We have about 40,000 acres here. And then we have a conservation easement on another 11,700 acres. So the conservation footprint here is a little over 50,000. This is our 27th annual Bison Roundup. People probably want to know, why are the bison here? That's a very good question. You know, the last recorded bison any place in the Tallgrass Prairie ecosystem that originally stretched from Canada to the Gulf of Mexico, the last recorded bison in that entire ecosystem was killed in northern Osage County in about 1851. That was a long time ago, and that's where we are now. The Tallgrass Prairie is a fairly recent ecosystem. It evolved in the last 10 or 12,000 years after the end of the last ice age, and it was created by the environmental or ecological forces of the climate. If you're out here today with this wind, you know we have plenty of climate. The second force that shaped it was fire at different seasons. And the third force that shaped it was grazing primarily by bison. So that's why the bison are here. In 1993, we reintroduced 300 bison that were given to us by Kenneth and Diana Adams. They were located just about 25 miles away near Bartlesville, a certified disease-free herd. What a wonderful gift. Okay, in 1993, we reintroduced 300 bison onto 5,000 acres here on the preserve. Each year, that area grew. We took out internal fences and we expanded the bison range. We also brought in bison from other preserves, ranging from the Wichita Mountains to the south, all the way to the National Bison Range in Montana. And the purpose of that was to broaden the genetic diversity of the bison. About 10 or 12 years ago, we closed the herd. The herd hasn't had any more animals brought in since then. And right now they're occupying almost 25,000 acres. So to round up about 2,200 bison on 25,000 acres is quite an undertaking. You probably wonder, how do we do this? Well, that's been an evolutionary process as well. But what we do now, Brad, if you could pan over this way and see the feed trucks, we have 2 feed trucks with bulk feeders on them. And what we have learned is bison than it is to drive them. We originally tried to drive them on 4-wheel drive ATVs, and that didn't turn out so well. Too many rocks, too many holes, too many ditches, too many streams, too many trees. But what we do is go out in the bison unit about 3 weeks or more before this working starts, and we'll run the siren, and the bison can hear that for a mile or 2 away, and we'll attract them to the pickups and then give them some cattle cubes. And the bison that have done this before know what that drill is. They're very smart animals, and they love the bison cubes or the cattle cubes. And so what we do is get them to following the pickups, and we get them into progressively smaller areas, eventually winding up in what we call the Mariel pasture, which is about 1,500 acres here adjacent to the preserve. And then what we do is about 3 or 4 days before we actually start working them in the corrals, we'll pull them into smaller traps. This is a very stressful time for the bison. This is a very stressful time for the cowboys that work them. As I mentioned, this is our 27th annual Bison Roundup. We have 5 staff members here at the Tallgrass Prairie Preserve that have participated in every one of those. That's phenomenal continuity. Working bison is a lot different than working cattle, and a lot of these cowboys are used to working cattle, but they adapt quickly to bison. This is a very stressful time for the bison. They didn't evolve going through a set of corrals. They don't like being confined in close quarters. So you can see in these traps, we give them a lot of room to roam. We do everything we can to protect the bison. We do everything we can to alleviate their stress. And we do everything to protect the cowboys. Our first interest, of course, is the people that work here. And secondly, the bison. We want to do everything we can to protect them. And this roundup is all about protecting them. If you look at the corrals here, you'll notice a series of catwalks, elevated ramps where the cowboys can work the bison without getting in with them. And so what we do is, before they start pushing them into the corrals per se, they will pull them with the feed trucks into a 50-acre trap that's back to the southwest. And then what they will do is, the morning we're going to start working them, they'll go out with 5 or 6 pickups online and try to get about 300 or so bison and push them into a funnel that feeds into these corrals. These guys have done this for so long, they've learned how to do it very well. I say that, and then the next time we'll have a rodeo, which we don't want. But we had a lot of learning experiences in the early years. But we don't want to get in with the bison in the corrals on foot or on a 4-wheeler. So we use the pickups for that. We get them going, and once you get the bison going in a particular direction, if you keep pushing them, they will go right on into this large corral right over here where you can see some animals. And then from there, we push them into a series of alleyways, and they get into progressively smaller and smaller enclosures. and they work their way up to what we call the sweep tub. This is a sweep tub, and this is a wonderful invention. If anybody's ever worked cattle, you know it's good to have them in a small confined area. So this gate in the center will pivot, and our guys from here, from the sweep tub, they work them into squeeze chutes. We have 4 squeeze chutes that we have the bison ready to go into the working chute. Any calves, you know, we have probably 600 or so calves born this spring. Any calves that are in this sweep tub, the cowboys want to get them out of there as quickly as possible because they're very vulnerable. When you bring them in from the pastures, you've got everything from the old bulls that can weigh up to 1,800 or more pounds to little calves that were born 6 or 8 months ago. So the calves are way here. Our guys are good at helping the bison release stress. You notice these bison are pretty calm. And you got a little calf in there that's very vulnerable. So what they do is let the little calves out this side door and into a trap over here. They have hay in there with them. We work the calves separately. We can't push them through the squeeze chute with the larger animals because the calves will just turn around. So when we work the calves, we have to move the squeeze chute in so the calves can't turn around. And then every evening, the calves that have been isolated into this holding pen over here are put in a much larger trap where they have even more room to roam. And they settle down very quickly. So what we're going to do now is get off of this catwalk and work our way up to the working chute, which is where the real action takes place. You can see these corrals are very sturdy. They're built for large animals. They're a lot larger than pens. The corrals themselves are much higher. I've seen bison accumulate so much stress, they have just run and crashed into these fences. These posts are set 5 feet in the ground in concrete. They're very sturdy. So let's work our way up to this working chute. Here we have 4 squeeze chutes, and the idea is to keep the working chute going. That's where the action pivots, and that's what you want to keep going. So this idea is to always have an animal ready to go into the wobble. And sometimes it's a struggle to get 4 bison into the holding chute at one time. And these squeeze chutes, they each have a sliding gate, a partition. So each animal is in there by himself. They don't get kicked that way. They don't get gored. They don't get damaged. I want to point out the main reason we do this roundup is for the bison's health and safety. We have about 2,200 bison, and that's as large a herd as we think we can have with the area they roam, with the area they graze. So the natural predator of the bison is gone. That was the wolves. They're extinct. So we, in effect, are the predator. So the idea of the roundup is to sell or remove and sell surplus animals. They're sold on an online auction. And then we check their health and we give them their inoculations. We give them basically the same inoculations that a neighboring rancher would give cattle. We calf foot vaccinate the heifer calves for brucellosis. That has to be done by a licensed veterinarian, and we only inoculate the heifer calves. If you give the vaccine to a bull calf, it'll make it sterile. But we inoculate them for blackleg, leptospirosis. We deworm them. We give them treatments for pink eye. We take very good care of our bison. And then we're going to go up to the working chute, which is where all of the action really centers. giving their shots. We have one guy on this side, another on the other side giving them their shots. The Perry in the front is giving them a medicine for worming, so they're dewormed. They're also weighed. We keep detailed records on each animal, their weight. They have a scale built into the working chute. We record their weight. We record any health matters. We record that they've had their shots. If it's an animal that's going to stay on the preserve, it goes right out that alleyway and into a 160-acre trap. So the time they go through here is pretty brief. If we can run one through per minute, we feel like we're doing well. If the animal is going to be sold, it goes into different pens, and those gates are controlled hydraulically by this gentleman here with all the joysticks. Coming through. And here we are at the center of the action. So you heard him call keeper cows, so that means they get all of their shots. We sell the cows when they're 10 and a half. If they're going to be sold, they're not going to get any shots. We sell bulls when they're 6 and a half, heifers and bulls, and then some 2.5-year-old heifers and bulls. We also, in their left ear, we put a transponder. And you'll notice Bob Hamilton, the preserve director, will scan their left ear. That brings that animal up. Well, apparently the transponder is not working. Sometimes they fail, sometimes they fall out. And so what he will do is put a new transponder in. That allows us to identify that animal per se. That brings that animal up on our computer screen. The computer shed is right behind you. It's a very difficult job. If you're going to hold a bison's head, you better know what you're doing. Both of these gentlemen have participated in every roundup. Don't want to brag on them too much, but they're darn good at what they do. We also put, and they're always happy to leave. We also put a metal ear tag in their left ear, so if the transponder fails, we can still identify that animal. You notice the working chute is spread wide when we're getting the animal in, and then they constrict it to secure the animal so it won't hurt itself. You notice we also have what's called a crash gate here in the front. It's lined with rubber. That's essential for bison. You don't see anything like that with cattle, but you have to have something like that with bison. You can't catch them by their neck when they're coming through there 90 miles an hour. You'll cause all kinds of problems. You'll catch them by the hip, or you'll miss them, or you'll get them too early and they can kill themselves. You notice the working chute does not have a bottom to it where their neck is. And that is if the animal should collapse or go down to its knees, it won't strangulate on a metal bar that may be blocking the airways. Putting another transponder in the left ear. He scans it first and then puts it in there so we can identify that animal per se. The other thing we do when we work the calves is we brand them on the left hip with the last digit of the year of their birth. That way, if the metal air tag in the right ear should fail or be lost, and the transponder should fail or be lost, we can still tell how old that animal is, and we can often, by process of elimination, determine which animal it is. The other thing I want to point out is the fellow giving the shots here, his father was at one time the foreman of the Chapman-Barnard Ranch. The Nature Conservancy bought the Barnard portion of the Chapman-Barnard Ranch, which was 29,000 acres back in 1989. Like I said earlier, it's grown to 40,000 acres now. So he was born and raised here. He just lives a few miles away and works on a neighboring ranch. That repository of knowledge and how to do this is amazing. And then the fellow giving shots on the other side is also works on a neighboring ranch, just lives a few miles from here. And he's been helping us for many years. That way, when you get ready to start something like this, and this takes about a week to do, it's a very long day, a very involved process. You probably hear the generators in the background. We still don't have power here. But when the cowboys show up on day one, they know what to do. So what we're going to do now is go over to another area and answer any questions that anyone may have. That bull is being turned out where he can go back out to the preserve. Okay.
All right, Harvey Payne.
This is the computer lady. She's been here from day one too. We can't do it without her.
Thank you, Harvey. That was wonderful. Thank you so much. This was a fabulous tour. So, hey, everyone. Harvey was just talking about, in the very beginning, about how we round up the animals. And we made a special video for you this morning. So while Harvey takes a break to get ready for the question and answer session, we are going to show you a video. So for those of you that have questions, please find the question and answer button that says Q&A. Type your questions in there. If you see a question that you like, suspect we're going to get a lot of questions, so we really want to try to get to the most the ones that you all are most curious about. What we are going to do right quick is we are going to show you a video from this morning. So that what is it like to round up several hundred bison? So each morning, as Harvey mentioned, the cowboys go out into the pasture with several trucks and they push the bison in. So we're going to show you the video from this morning's Bison Roundup. Are y'all ready? Here we go. Let me share my screen. Pretty exciting stuff. We wish that we could share that with you live. However, it's very difficult to squeeze all of the Bison Roundup activities into 1 hour, so we had to record that for you. And I also probably don't think that everybody would want to get up at 6:45 a.m. whenever that happens. So we thought we'd get a pre-recorded version of that and share it with you all. So thank you so much. Allison's got a question for you, and 22 people want to know. This is like inquiring minds want to know. What kind of organizations and or people buy the bison and for what types of purpose? Meat, fur, cultural uses, etc.
Now that's a real good question. And that's a question that's very difficult to answer because it's different each year. As I mentioned, this is our 27th roundup. The first one was in December of 1994, and we sold surplus bison then. We didn't have very many to sell, but we sold them. And so what we did for the first 25 years is take sealed bids. And so we just sold them to the highest bidder. In that 25-year span, a lot of them went into establishing bison herds or to augmenting existing bison herds or into meat production. Some years it was all of one or all of the other, but usually it's a mix. A number of them have gone to preserves in Texas to establish bison herds or to ranches to establish bison herds. Last year, we did it a little differently as far as the sale. We did an online auction. And we know that most of the bison last year went into meat production. But who knows what will happen this year? We won't know until the auction's finished. Sometimes the buyer lets us know. Usually they do, but they don't always tell us. But bison meat is not only healthy and tasty, it's very popular right now. So there's a very large demand for it. So I would animals will go into meat production.
Fabulous. Thank you, Harvey, for answering that. I know, like you said, it's not a simple question or a simple answer. It does vary year to year. All right, we've got our next popular question voted by 20 coming from Carrie. Carrie is asking you, Harvey, how do you decide which young bison, aka the yearlings, are kept and which ones will be sold?
Well, that's a question that Bob Hamilton has answered for 27 years. And what we do is, of course, like any bovine operation, we try to keep what we think are the best animals. So we keep what we think are the better end of the heifers and calves, and we sell, or the heifers and bulls, we sell the lower end of them. You know, they're still good, but we just feel like we try to keep the best ones.
Super. Thank you, Harvey. All right, our next question is coming from Larry Hicks with a vote of 22. If any bison become ill during the year, do veterinarians intervene or do you allow nature to take its course?
No, we allow nature to take its course. We've tried different scenarios through the 27 years we've done this. We've learned that, you know, first of all, the bison are very hardy animals. In very rare instances do we intervene. We've even tried to help pull calves when bison were having trouble calving. We've learned that we generally cause more problems than we solve. And it's difficult for the bison, it's stressful for them, it's dangerous for our hands. And so in about 99% of the instances, we just let Mother Nature take its course. And bison are very tough animals. They're good at recovering from a lot of injuries.
All right, super. Thank you, Harvey. We've got our next popular question from Eric Murphy. And Eric is asking, does the Nature Conservancy involve the Osage tribe in the Tallgrass Prairie Preserve?
We certainly do. You know, it's interesting you'd ask that. This was part of the Osage domain for many more years than we've been here, or white people have been here for that matter. So we have a good relationship, I think, with the Osage tribe. We had a photo session last year, I believe, is either last year or the year before. We had all 5 living Osage chiefs have their photo made with the bison in the background, just on the immediate west side of these corrals. That was pretty significant to have them out there in the tall grass. And that was a project Norris Streetman undertook. He videoed them and he made still photographs. It was a very special event that I got to attend. Plus, the Osages participate in a number of our functions here. When the bison were released in 1993, Ed Red Eagle, one of the spiritual leaders of the tribe, who was fluent in Osage and who was also a full-blood Osage, he gave a prayer blessing the land and blessing the bison in Osage, and then translated it to English. And it was a very, very moving prayer that he gave. Since then, Ed has passed away, and his son, Eddie Red Eagle Jr., often does the same thing. He's been involved in a number of events here, and he gives a prayer similar to his dad, wearing the same robe his dad wore and using the same eagle feather fan that his dad used. So I feel like we have a close and spiritual relationship with the Osages, and it's one that we value and treasure and want to see enhanced.
Thank you, Harvey. There's a long history there. We greatly appreciate you sharing that with us. If we had more time, folks, Harvey can give quite the tribal history lesson for all of us. He's very knowledgeable and has an extensive history of working with the tribe. So thank you, Harvey, for sharing. Our next question comes from Annie Fan. Annie is asking, how does a healthy bison herd assist with prairie restoration?
Well, that's a good question. You know, as I mentioned earlier, the species of bison that we have now is only about 5,000 or 6,000 years old. They're descendants of earlier, larger Pleistocene bison. Those bison very much shaped this landscape with the prairie, and the prairie evolved with them. So they're a very strong ecological force on the prairie. We've done a number of bison dietary studies. In every sample, at least 99% of their diet was grass. The rest was broadleaf plants. We've done a number of plant censuses here, and we've identified over 750 plant species. Of those, about 113 to 15 are grasses. The rest are broadleaf plants. What happens with cattle grazing over an extended period of time, and I'm not in any way knocking cattle grazing because my wife and I are ranchers as well. I come from a ranching family. But cattle eat 80 to 85% of their diet as grass, and the rest will be broadleaf plants. That difference is not big in a course of a year or two. But cattle have been grazing here for 125 years or so. And in that period of time, with that plant selection, you see a shift in the plant community. So how the bison are helping is, first of all, that was one of the principal ecological forces that shaped this. Our goal here is to restart those ecological processes. That's why we do prescribed burns. That's why we have the bison, and allow the prairie to continue to evolve into wherever it goes. And we don't know where that'll be, but our goal here is to restart a functioning tallgrass prairie ecosystem that was lost 170 years ago when bison were killed out of this area.
Wonderful. Harvey, thanks for explaining that and going into detail. Greatly appreciate it. Our next popular question, voted by the public, is when, Harvey Payne, is the best? This is one of my favorite questions, and I love Harvey's answer. So here we go. When is the best time of year to visit the Tallgrass Prairie Preserve?
You know, I get that question a lot. There's a fellow named Joe Krieger that when I was a kid had a fishing program in Tulsa on a TV station. And he said the best time to go fishing is whenever you can. And I think the same thing about the Tallgrass Prairie Preserve. Each season is special. This time of year is really special. We've been watching today a number of birds migrating through. Yesterday I saw a scissor-tailed flycatcher. I haven't seen one for 3 or 4 weeks passing through. We've seen a lot of Franklin's gulls. This time of year you get a lot of migratory birds. We saw 2 trumpeter swans this morning. That was amazing. I usually don't see trumpeter swans until December, but we get a lot of overwintering raptors in here. We've already seen short-eared owls. This morning I saw a rough-legged hawk. We get a lot of northern harriers in here. There goes a Franklin's gull right now, several of them streaming by. This is a wonderful time to come, but the winter is also special. I love to see bison in the snow. The springtime is great when you get baby bouncing bison calves and a lot of wildflowers. And then I like the summer when the tall grasses reach their apex, reach for the sky. You can find big bluestem up to 10 feet tall, especially along the hiking trail. So to answer your question, I think every season is special. Every season has its own special qualities. And every time you come up here, even if it's consecutive days for a week, you'll see something different. So keep your eyes open, keep your binoculars handy, and your camera ready.
So Harvey, if I hear you correctly, that's like picking your favorite child?
That's a good analogy.
All right, fantastic. Thank you for that question. Our next question is from Meg Stevens, and she's curious, what is that hook thing that they were putting into the bison's mouth there up front at the chute, Harvey?
Well, that is to dispense a fluid into their mouth. It's long enough so that it will go down their throat. They can't just get it in their mouth and spit it back out. So they insert that, and then they pump a solution of dewormer. That deworms some of the bison parasites that they have.
All right, super. So we've got our next question here. And let's see, voted by the popular attendees here, voted most popular by the attendees. Our next one is, this is kind of long, it's a double question, just heads up, Harvey. I presume these bison have 100% bison genetics. Is that correct? That's part A. You want to go with part A?
Let's hear the rest of it.
All right, the rest of it is, do you periodically do genetic
One figure I've heard is 541 plains animals were all that were left out of the 30 to 60 million that were here historically. So a huge bottleneck. They were generally saved by ranchers with the idea of crossbreeding bison with cattle to produce a hardier animal that wouldn't have so much trouble getting through a winter and wouldn't have to be fed in the winter. So as a result, cattle DNA and what we have done, we started, I don't know, 10 years or so ago, pulling hair samples from the bison's tail. There's an internationally known geneticist at Texas A&M named James Durr, D-E-R-R, very, very well respected and prominent in his field. And we had those samples analyzed for cattle mitochondrial DNA. There's two types of DNA. You have nuclear DNA that's just spread everywhere, and then you have the mitochondrial DNA that drives the bison's engine. It's what makes them want to act like a bison, makes them want to be a herd animal, makes them want to eat grass instead of broadleaf plants. That's the fueling DNA. And that's only passed from females. It's not passed to offspring by males. So what we did, we had the samples analyzed. We found about 5% of our bison had cattle mitochondrial DNA in their gene pool. So any any females that had cattle mitochondrial DNA were pulled from the herd and sold. We still, we continued that testing for several years. So we removed all of the cattle mitochondrial DNA. The geneticist said, don't worry about the nuclear DNA. There's nothing you can do about it. It's so pervasive and it doesn't matter anyway. But what we're doing this year is just to monitor the situation. We're still pulling the same hair follicles and saving those at Texas A&M in case we want to analyze them later.
Thank you, Harvey, for sharing that. It is very interesting. I've seen the different samples of the hair samples before, and it's interesting to feel the texture of their hair. It's very coarse, that tail hair that they take. Okay, we're going to move on to our next question here. And Harvey, I'm going to see if I can't take this one, and I would love for you to add to it if I don't get it all. Sarah Brown and 15 others would like to know, what's the most important thing we can do to protect bison and restore the prairie? She's also asking if we can sponsor a bison. So Sarah, there's a number of things that anyone can do. And I believe the most important thing is really up to you. What is it that motivates you, that inspires you, and what do you have to give? So we will share some information at the end of this presentation about a number of ways, things that you can do. And of course, one of those is speaking up for nature. And we do have some resources online. We do need folks to talk, have more conversations, carry this story with you wherever you go, share with others about about the importance of the prairie and the bison. Of course, if you would like to donate, you may. We do have resources available to help you through that process, of course. But in the chat, there will be some information of who you can contact if you would like to donate. But as far as what the most important thing is that you can do, I don't know that I can answer that for you. But collectively, there are a lot of things that we all need to do, whether it's speaking up for nature, whether it's donating to help conservation organizations like the Nature Conservancy continue these efforts. Are all different things that you can do. Taking friends to field trips or hosted tours, getting friends to watch this. We will record this webinar. You can share it with your friends. Help us generate more fans and advocates for the prairie and for bison. We'll talk more about that in just a little bit. Harvey, did I miss anything on that one?
You answered it very well, but I'd like to add something.
Thank you. Please do.
You know, we own a little over 39,000 acres here. We lease another 1,000 acres within our boundaries. We have conservation easements on 11,700 acres that either join the preserve or are nearby. We just in the last few years built new houses for 4 of our cowboys. Their houses were very, very old and very antiquated and very dysfunctional. We have a research station. We have these wonderful corrals. They are huge. Everything we have, we have 2,200 bison. We have a lot of trucks. We have a lot of firefighting equipment. Everything we have here was because somebody donated to make it happen, because somebody loved the prairie enough to give their money to make this happen. That's pretty touching. And you know, at a time when you kind of lose faith in humankind and see all the bad things going on in the world, projects like this make you feel good. And this is a good way for people, I think, to invest in their pleasure now, their children's pleasure, their grandchildren's pleasure, and on down the line.
Very inspiring and powerful. Thank you, Harvey. You nearly brought me to tears. All right, so our next one is from Carol Nolan, the next most popular question, and that is, Harvey, how long does a bison live?
Well, that depends a lot. If they're not injured or sick or slaughtered or whatever, a cow can live to be 25 or so without a problem. They can produce offspring into their 20s. Bulls will live usually, I'd say 8 or 10 years less. By the time bulls are 12, they just separate themselves from the herd. They're not a functioning part of the herd. They don't participate in the rut. They just go off and do their own thing. But they could live to be 15 or more years old. Plus, it helps to live in a place like this. You know, this is paradise for bison.
If I were a bison, I'd want to live here. Heck, I want to live here now, and I'm not a bison. All right, our next question is from Daryl, or I'm not sure if that's all one word, Darylingmeyer. I'm going to go for that. How many bison, Harvey, are missed during the roundup, and what happens to them?
Well, we've got a lot of great questions, and that always happens. You know, you look at 25,000 acres, that's a lot of square miles. That's a lot of hills, that's a lot of valleys, that's a lot of trees. And we have wooded areas, both upland wooded areas and bottomland wooded areas. And some of these bison are pretty good at hiding in them. So every year we know we miss 10 or 12. As far as what happens to them, our guys are pretty good at finding them and attracting them with cattle cubes. That doesn't mean the bison will participate in a bison drive for several miles to the pens. So what we do is we use a dart gun to give them their inoculations. So they still get their vaccines, even though they don't play ball here.
Super, thank you, sir. So our next one, a lot of folks are curious. We saw that bison, the last bison that went down in the chute and then left out,
Yes.
Evan Searcy, I'm not sure. Okay, so I'm just going to read the question, obviously. Here we go, Katie, you can do this. With that last bison, they hit it with what looked like an air compressor, after which the bison fell. Was that a sedation method of some sort? Harvey, can you explain what we were seeing there, please?
I didn't see anything. We don't have anything like that to sedate them. They're just sedated by being squeezed. It's called a squeeze chute. That bison, for some reason, wasn't getting the air or whatever that it thought it needed. And it just went down to its knees, but it quickly recovered and trotted off. It was fine. That's why I mentioned earlier, there are no obstructions below their neck. So if they go down like that, and that happens every now and then, if they go down like that, they don't suffocate. If you look at a cattle working chute, there will be a bar underneath their neck. And if they collapse, but the bison have a very pronounced trachea and it's vulnerable. And if they collapse, they can suffocate and die. But that one recovered pretty quickly. I would say it probably just got the breath squeezed out of it when they squeezed the chute, be my guess.
Thank you, Harvey, for explaining that. All right, our next question is from Rosalie, excuse me, I was butchering your name there, Rosalie, my apologies. She's asking, how long does the roundup take, Harvey?
Well, if we don't have breakdowns, and you can imagine with bison weighing up to 1,800 or more pounds, they stress everything we have here. And often steel does break. We'll bring in a welder or whatever we need to fix it. But it takes about a week. But you know, we were 2 days late getting started on this because we didn't have any power. Things were iced over. You couldn't even open these gates. They were encrusted in ice and it was raining. We can't do much about the weather. Although we do have pretty good facilities here where we can work in a lot of weather, you just can't do it in a constant downpour. So weather permitting, breakdowns permitting, about 7 days.
All right, we've got time for one more question here, folks. Harvey, this one's quite frankly absolutely adorable. Ryan Allen, whomever you are, thank you for inviting your daughter to join us on this call. It's always fun to get kids involved. So this is from his 3-year-old daughter, or her name is Haiti or Hattie, one or the other. She's asking Harvey, what do the bison like to eat?
Well, the natural foods, they like grasses. And you know, the 4 tall grasses that are warm season grasses here are big blue stem, little blue stem, Indian grass, and switchgrass. Those grasses are very high on their preferred list. And I would say the highest would be big blue stem. That's just my guess. I'm not a biologist, but I've raised bison myself for 19 years and been involved here for a long time. They avoid broadleaf plants, but they do love the cattle cubes that we give them that are a mixture of molasses and grain. But they only get that during the roundup. That's a special treat to entice them to come up here and play ball.
I'm gonna do a share screen right after this. Oh, you heard me. I'm doing share screen now. Thank you, Harvey. I forgot I wasn't on mute. I was letting our executive producer behind the scenes, puppeteer Larissa Balzer, know that we are now moving into a share screen mode. And so thank you so much, Harvey Payne, for your incredible expertise and for your time and sharing this with us, and for your patience through the wind and the technology, and for joining us on this journey. Thank you everyone for joining us. We do have a few other items to share with you right quick. So let me pull that up as we go into share screen mode. All right, so if you all would like to learn more about the Tallgrass Prairie Preserve bison herd, you can stampede on over to nature.org/okbison. There you can watch more videos. You can learn more about the work we're doing as well as research. All kinds of good materials are there. Additionally, let me get you to the next slide here. We are having another webinar coming up. One of bison's best friend is fire. And we have burned over 1 million acres here in Osage County. And we will be hosting on November 18th at noon. We will be hosting a webinar with our very own Bison Bob Hamilton. He will be talking with us about their crew and their efforts to burn over 1 million acres in Osage County. Join us on that date. You can register at nature.org/OKwebinars. We hope you will join us again. Additionally, did you know the Nature Conservancy, we work in 50 states as well as 74 countries. We are all over the world. If you want to learn more about what the Nature Conservancy is doing in your neck of the woods, hop on over to nature.org and check it out. Also, as Sarah Brown was asking, what can we do to help protect bison, to help protect the places like the Tallgrass Prairie Preserve? We need your voice. We need your voice. We can't build more land. We can't grow more water, and we all must speak up for nature. Online at nature.org, you can find an environmental issues guide that you can access, and it has more items and resources on how you can take action to help protect nature. I am so grateful for you all to join us today, and greatly appreciate all that you've done and have done and continue to do to help support conservation and all that we do here at the Nature Conservancy. We hope that you will join us again on another future webinar call or one of our places or our other activities. There's a lot of virtual engagement going on during this time of COVID through all of our chapters throughout all 50 states as well as other countries. So please visit nature.org and learn more about what we're doing in your area. And we do hope to see you again soon and hope that you all stay safe and healthy. Thank you for joining us for live Bison Roundup 2020.